Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Caw, and as ever, I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how's it going? I think we might have lost his audio there.
I'm getting a delay on the line, Dan. Do you remember that happened previously one time?
That's right. Well, how's it going? A good start. Andy,
Yeah.
Andy, I'll maybe come to yourself, Andy. How's it going with you?
I'm very well. Glad to be here as always, boys.
I've always thought Keith was via satellite, to be honest. He's always a wee bit...
Behind the times.
A wee bit slow.
A wee bit behind the times, but there you go.
There you go. That's it.
The time he hears this, we'll be long gone. So.
We'll be on to tomorrow's show. I think the best place for us to start, it's not a particularly nice thing to kick off with, but I need to start, Andy, by mentioning Diogo Jota, who, I mean, we've all seen the news stories today. He sadly passed away in a car accident with his brother. It's one of these stories that it's just absolutely horrible. I don't even have the words to articulate how horrible it is.
It's one of those stomach punch moments, isn't it? It just takes the air out of you. I mean, I was sitting this morning when the news came through, and it's one of those ones that you have to check your phone again, read it twice, read it a third time. You're hoping it's some kind of sick joke or a horrible misunderstanding. And unfortunately, tragically, sadly, it was very much true. And unfortunately, a fantastically gifted footballer has been taken away from him far too early. And it's really one of those moments that just makes you sort of sit back and take account of just how, sometimes things that we all cling to as important, you realise how unimportant they are, how frivolous they can be, and how there's bigger things to worry about in life. So, listen, my condolences. I'm sure to you that are on with us tonight, your condolences, and I know the Daily Records goes to Diogo Jota and the rest of his family and the Liverpool supporters and his friends. So it's just such a very, very sad day.
Hopefully you're back with us, Keith. Obviously just mentioned Diogo Jota.
Yeah, it's desperate, Dan.
I just said, I don't even have the words to articulate. Married 10 days ago, 28 years old. Just a horrible story.
It's just desperate, and I think, in a horribly ironic twist to the whole thing, I think he was advised that, I mean, it wasn't as if that was him, gallivanting holiday. It was actually making his way to get an overnight ferry to get back to training, because having been advised by a doctor not to take a flight, I don't know if he'd just had surgery.
It was a lung problem, I think.
Well, so the medical advice was, don't fly, take the ferry. And so there's an ultimate professional making his way back with his brother. I mean, where do you start with that for the family? Two brothers. I think his younger brother was 26. It's beyond devastating. And he was such a, I'm listening to a lot of testimonies today and people talking about him, and to a man, they're saying that he was a real pleasant kind of individual who was just a joy to be around, guy that lifted people's spirits. And for Liverpool as a team, he was this guy, he was like the go-to man, wasn't he? If Liverpool were ever in a spot of bother in any game, Jota more often than not wouldn't start. But if Liverpool were in trouble, if they were needing a goal from somewhere, it was almost every time they would turn to the bench, and more often than not, he would come on the pitch and be a game changer. So, a terrific person, and that's going to be a real heavy loss for everybody around the football club. But for the supporters, and Liverpool just have this sort of unfortunate relationship with tragedy, don't they? And they're only just recovering from what happened with the trophy parade at the end of last season.
Aye.
If they are recovering from that, and then hit with this, it's it's beyond sad, Daniel. It really is. 28-year-old with genuinely, literally, with the world at his feet.
Just starting out his life.
As Andy says, all you can do is pass on your condolences, but it's only words at the end of the day. I mean, people are living through a real life tragedy here, and my heart goes out.
As Mark says on the screen there, times like this remind us what's really important in life. Luke's saying life can be so cruel, you never know what's around the corner. Like as you said, both guys said, our thoughts go out to Diogo Jota's family. And it's beyond sad. I think it's the best way to sum it up, Keith.
Desperate.
We have to talk about football, though. We have to get back to that.
Right, see, before we do, let me apologise for my technical disaster there at the start.
I mean, it's bang out of order, to be honest.
But the strange thing is, I don't know how I was able to fix it. But,
there you go.
Somehow we're back.
Do what I do. Give it a slap a couple of times, and eventually, you bang it with a hammer, and eventually it comes back on. So.
Andy, as the gold standard bearer of the IT department, always said with such issues, switch it off and switch it on again. It always seems to work. So sorry about that, lads.
Aye, that's all right. Well, maybe start with yourself then on the news that's come out this afternoon regarding Nicholas Kuhn.
Yeah.
The Celtic winger appears to be on his way to Coman.
Yeah. Look, do you know what? It was funny because, see, this morning, Andy, I don't know if it was the same for you, but scratching around this morning going, this feels it's unusually quiet this morning when you're scouting about, trying to get some news stories. And I had a conversation with somebody and I said, that it just feels like this afternoon will probably start to get a bit mental. And that's exactly what has happened. There's been a bit of a tsunami of news stories washing about this afternoon. The latest one of which was Nicholas Kuhn. We've had it confirmed from sources at the club, that's Celtic, that a deal has been agreed in principle and is now just pending a medical. So it's basically got to the final stages. The price that we're being told is 20 million euros, which I think is just over 17 million quid. It's a hell of a bit of business for a player that Celtic got in the door 18 months ago for 3 million. So, and let's be blunt about it, a guy that put down the tools as soon as Celtic were out of the Champions League last season. So for all those reasons and more, it's just another example of Celtic kind of mastering the art of working their way around, plotting their way around the transfer market, especially when it comes to the sale of players. This looks like another great bit of business. And the more that Scottish clubs can do that, and you're looking at Rangers with Coman just now trying to achieve something similar, the more that they can do it, the more they prove that their models work, the more money comes into the Scottish game and the healthier the whole thing should be. And you're looking for that to continue down the scale. And, we're looking at Lennon Miller, for example. I noticed Scott McDermott wrote something interesting saying that Rangers had actually put in a low ball bid of about £1 million for Lennon Miller 12 months ago, which had remained, not known about until this point. That was interesting, but Motherwell ain't going to be selling anywhere near that amount. Motherwell will be looking for 4 million and above for Lennon Miller. There's another good one. There's another good solid bit of business, and it just helps. The more that we can raise, our clubs raise, the more that money starts to wash around the game in this country, the better it will be. So, these are all significant, and there'll be Celtic fans out there, I'm sure, that will be sad to see the backer, Nicholas Kuhn. I think there'll be a larger majority, I would say, that will look upon this for what it really is, which is just really shrewd bit of business. And I think there was probably some Celtic fans, and I'll include the manager in that, Brendan Rodgers, who were less than convinced with Nicholas Kuhn's approach to the tail end of last season. That as soon as the Champions League was over, he seemed to put the tools away. Brendan Rodgers did highlight this as something that was concerning him in the final few weeks of the season and said that will be addressed during the summer. And I think Nicholas Kuhn's departure, imminent departure from the club, speaks a lot to that, and what Brendan Rodgers, the warning that Brendan Rodgers did put out. I think it was after the game in Perth towards the tail end of last season.
Aye. Andy, there's a few Celtic fans on social media, and I know social media is not the be-all and end-all, but a few fans thinking that Celtic should have maybe held out for a bigger asking price. But as Keith says, look, just my opinion, 20 million euros for Nicholas Kuhn is amazing business, I think. I think it's a great price.
I do too. I think, what did he? I think it cost £3 million.
3 million, yeah.
He came in 18 months ago. And you consider, as Keith rightly says, there was 2 spells sort of bookending that, hot sort of run that he had, where he wasn't really, at it. I mean, you remember when he first came in, I think I was speaking about this one of the last times I was on the Hotline Live, when he had these issues with his teeth, and it took him a long while to get that kind of issue sorted, the way it, sort of led to other issues, hamstring issues and things like that. And then obviously he starts the season on fire up until about Christmas time. You're right, and it's between him and Daizen Maeda to shoot it out for the Player of the Year prizes. And as Keith says, his form just falls off a cliff. The sort of last third of the campaign, still a terrific. His performances were crucial, especially in that first half of the season, as to say, where Celtic just ran away with things, where they wrapped up effectively the title well before Christmas, and he was as key to that as anyone. So the fact that they're getting now what they're going to £3 million, they're going to get 17 back, they're going to get 5 times their money for a guy that hasn't always been at it. I think it's fantastic business. Now the question is, what do they do with it? And as Keith rightly says, the model that Celtic have got, they've got it nailed. They're getting at least one of these sales every single season where they move somebody on, make a packet and reinvest it. It's going to be interesting now. Do they go, right, if you get another 17 million pound, do you just divide that in two and go and spend it on 2 £8 million players sort of thing? Or are they just going to spread it a bit thinner than that and maybe not get the high level quality they can get? I mean, I suppose you look at the money that they spent on Arne Engels, on Adam Idan, to be honest, even at 8, 9, 10 million pounds, you're not guaranteed to get guys that are ready-made superstars, even with that kind of money. Unfortunately, anymore, the money that's swashing about down south just means that even at 8, 9, 10 million pounds, you're buying potential. So it will be interesting to see how they spend it. But it's fantastic business from Celtic. They've absolutely cracked this business model that they have. They've set a benchmark for what their talent is worth, and they're reaping the benefits of that every single season. Whoever's the best performer gets moved on for serious money.
In many respects, by the way, Andy, the other clubs in Scotland should be grateful for it as well, because Scottish football has been regarded as this almost like an outpost, a backwater, whatever you want to call it, where clubs could just come and take players from our clubs for bargain basement fees. Now, in the whole scale of things and in context, these are probably, you'd be struggling to go to the English Premier League and buy a creative goal-scoring winger for 20 million euros. That'd be a challenge. But even so, Celtic have driven up the base price for their own players, but I think there's a trickle-down effect. And Rangers should hopefully benefit from that when they finalise their deal for Igaman and whoever else they're looking to sell on. But I think Celtic have certainly driven up the value of players on the Scottish domestic scene, particularly at Celtic. But as I said to you, you are looking for the trickle down from that.
Pal Gianni in the comment section, and I should say, if you want to send us your comments, please do so. We'll try and answer them. Gianni says Celtic will need to sign a few wingers with Jota being out for the season. Yang and Forrest not going to set the world on fire either. And a couple of people wondering if this means that other players are ring fenced now. Rebel saying that Daizen stays, that's even better news. And once again, Gianni asking you guys, do you think anyone else of major calibre will leave Celtic this summer?
My only concern would be where Rio Hatate's head is at, because what I was told some months ago, turn of the year, was that there was a little bit of agitating going on from him and his camp, similar to the noises that Kyogo was making before Kyogo left. Now, by the way, in the intervening period, he might well have had a look at how it's worked out for Kyogo in France and thought better of it, and realised maybe he's had conversations with Kyogo and realised that the grass isn't always greener. But that will be interesting to discover where his head's at right now, if he thinks it's time for him to move on. I think that would be the only one of major concern in terms of, you know, guys going out the way from Celtic. I would have thought guys that I'm sure the fans and Brendan Rodgers as well would rather keep. I think Kyogo would be, Rio Hatate would be at the top of that list. But if he's content, as I've said previously, I never really considered Maida leaving to be serious this summer. I've always said on this show, Daniel, consistently, I really believe that he's happy, settled, and has no inclination or desire to push for him. Now, these things can always be subject to change. If somebody comes in and offers megabucks someplace, then, you know, all of a sudden your aspirations can change. But I see no indication of that from Daizen Maida, and I would fully expect him to be kept on board. And, you know, talk there about Celtic need to get wingers in. Well, I think Daizen Maida returning to the left-hand side is probably very close to the top of Brendan Rodgers' agenda when he's looking tactically about what he wants to do to set his team up next season. So I think at least one winger is needed to add to the mix, and I think another striker. And then at that point in time, I think Celtic's options look pretty robust.
And before we move on from Celtic, Keith, I understand you have a little bit more news on Caman and Carter-Vickers. We talked about it in last night's show that he hasn't started pre-season training yet. There was even a suggestion that he'd had an operation. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, I can confirm that he has had an operation, Daniel. But Celtic are extremely relaxed about it. He hasn't joined in full training yet, but that is imminent, I am told. So there is no concern about Caman and Carter-Vickers not being ready for the start of Celtic season. I'm told that it was a knee cartilage issue, and it was the same long-running issue that was troubling him towards the end of last season when he had a wee spell out of the team to rest it. The medical department realised it would probably require a tidy-up operation. That is why Caman and Carter-Vickers was told that he wouldn't be available for the USA international schedule. They've got a really busy summer schedule, which is still ongoing, doesn't end to next week with a CONCACAF Gold Cup tie against Mexico. So if Caman and Carter-Vickers was part of that, he'd still be there just now. But a decision was made that he wouldn't be available for selection for international duty. He went and did the operation, and I think that they're very relaxed about the timescale now. I don't expect, obviously, he won't play any part against Queen's Park on Friday. I doubt very much that he'll be on the trip to Cork next week for a friendly. But I think round about once the team is coming back from that match, I think the hope would be that Caman and Carter-Vickers would be ready to rejoin the group and play a full part in the rest of the pre-season.
That's the thing, Andy, is that, look, the only thing that really matters to Celtic fans now is as long as he plays in that Champions League qualifier that's coming up, because he is absolutely essential to Celtic.
He's the bedrock of that defence, isn't he? I mean, he's been fantastic servant since he came. So, yeah, I'm absolutely certain that they'll be hoping to get him back as quick as possible. As you say, these international fixtures over the summer, they just the time for recovery. At the moment, you add into this Club World Cup as well. It just seems like the players are nowadays, if you're at the top level, you're just getting so little time to switch off to let your body recover. So I think it'll be key to Celtic. They allowed him to rest up, get whatever procedure needed, get himself back fit, and do it in plenty of time. Give himself the build up, the games, the friendlies, obviously a couple of league games before that crucial the playoff round. So it's there's just so much money riding on these games that you really can't be affording to gamble on your key men and their fitness, letting them go away and play these international games. I know Caman Carter-Vickers will have international ambitions of his own, but that can't come at the cost of Celtic. So it was absolutely right that he took the summer off and got himself right for Celtic.
It is ironic though, Andy, isn't it, that this happens at the same time as John Sutter goes to playing bounce games against Iceland and they'd sit on the bench in Liechtenstein and delay the hernia operation, which has left him really racing up against the clock. We still don't know quite where he is in this race to be fit for the first qualification game against Panathinaikos. But it's a far from ideal set of circumstances. And you look at Celtic medical team making that decision, and then this void of leadership that was happening at Auchenhowie, which somehow, in their wisdom, it was approved for John Sutter to go and play in these games. It sounded crazy at the time. It's not making any more sense now, to be honest, Andy.
It'll be interesting to see just what sort of defence Rangers put out on Sunday when they play their first pre-season friendly against Club Brugge. I mean, there's obviously a few new faces came in today, this week, sorry. But yeah, we'll be interested to see if he's ready. If he's ready to rock in that one. If not, then the clock is firmly ticking towards that first Champions League qualifier against Panathinaikos in 2.5 weeks' time.
Well, on that, sorry, Keith, let me jump in. Rangers Easy OK says we won't need him, Keith. 3 centre halves on the way. He prioritised Scotland. It's his problem. And I was just going to come in and say, obviously, it's been a busy couple of days at Rangers with more incomings.
Yeah, well, you know, that is really interesting as well, that John Sutter did make this decision. I don't know if he made it because he wasn't happy, that again, because of the lack of leadership around the club, that his contractual situation had been allowed to get to where it is now, which is just 1 year to go in his current deal. I don't know if that frustrated him. I don't know what the motivation was, other than I know that John Sutter is, you know, deeply passionate about playing for club and country. So, you know, maybe he would have put himself in that position in any case. But I think what was required there was a clear bit of leadership. And because that John Sutter can't be depended upon now to be fit for these games, which are so crucial to, you know, the next step for Rangers financially, then it's left Russell Martin. It's probably altered how Russell Martin's recruitment drive has had to take shape. He's probably had to prioritise central defenders because he knows fine well that he needs quality cover in those positions. And John Sutter could pay a price for that, ultimately. You would expect, if Rangers get the Connor Cody deal over the line, and we expect, Andy, don't we, that to be perhaps before the weekend. So Connor Cody, he's a nailed down starter. As long as he's fit and available, he will play. So Rangers right now trying to sign 2 further centre halves, one on loan from Wolves. Help me out.
Nasser Jiga.
Yeah, Nasser Jiga. And sorry, they brought in Fernandez from Peterborough, who, young boy, but obviously they think he's got a bright future. So you can see already shaping up here a bit of a problem for John Sutter trying to force his way back into that starting team. And I would imagine, I'm not sure that Russell Martin would have been so heavy on searching for central defenders so early in the summer if John Sutter was fit and available, and you know, there was no doubts about whether or not he was going to be fit for that Panathinaikos game. So it's a big decision in many ways, and one that, you know, some people might have to regret at some point in the not too distant future.
As Keith says, Andy, Emmanuel Fernandez has checked in Ibrox from Peterborough, a centre half. Obviously, it came hot in the heels last night of Joe Rothwell signing a 3-year deal. But as Keith again said, expecting more potentially before Sunday's friendly against Bruges.
Listen, I think it's the one thing we can all agree on, that Rangers need plenty of incomings this summer. So the fact that it seems that there's a new name propping up every 20 minutes at the moment, which doesn't make our lives any easier trying to get a handle on these sort of things. But you know, they definitely need reinforcements all over the pitch, not least the centre back. So I mean, just on Fernandez, it's an interesting one because I'm not entirely convinced that he's a guy that's coming in to start. It's bizarre sort of trying to get a grasp on the feedback from the Peterborough fans, from fans that have seen him playing down south. It seems that he's a guy that's got all the tools, but has he necessarily put them all together? Has he managed to get his game, all the working parts of it going in the same direction? I'm not so sure yet. I mean, you're looking at a guy 6'5", apparently really aggressive in the air, really aggressive on the ground, likes to run with the ball, he's a goal threat as well, but can be rash at times, can suffer indiscipline, can have lapses of concentration. So he looks like a guy that's probably going to have some considerable time spent just sort of polishing up his rough edges. But that's where Rangers are at the moment. They're having to gamble on potential. Joe Rothwell doesn't seem to be anything like that. I've got a funny feeling everyone I spoke to Tony Mowbray yesterday, who'd signed him for Blackburn, couldn't have spoke more highly of him as a player and a man, but also just he went into detail in the sort of the changes that he's made to his game. I think anybody who's watched these sort of highlights reel will see this guy's a really strong ball carrier. If you try and put, press resistant, you try and put the squeeze on him, he'll just drop a shoulder and he'll charge 20, 30 yards up the pitch. I don't think he's somebody that will necessarily play a killer pass, but what will be somebody is drags Rangers up in terms of territory. But as I said, they need a lot more, both at sort of front end of the park, the back end of the park, the middle of the park. The Rangers need a lot of reinforcements, and as you say, the clock is ticking, not just to this Bruges game, but more importantly the Panathinaikos game. So yeah, getting them some game time, getting them used to Ibrox will be important, but they have to get them in before July 22nd, that Panathinaikos game at Ibrox. That is the be all, the end all for Russell Martin right now.
And we're hearing, Andy, that Asgard from Luton looks as if that's in the final stretch as well, doesn't it? It looks as if that one is a goer.
Yep, Scott McDermott's spoken to some people behind the scenes and has learned that is definitely on the cards. And again, they're hopeful that the ambition certainly is to get it done before the weekend. So as we say, he can get out and get a look at Ibrox and get himself acclimatised. But again, a really exciting talent, somebody who likes to run, likes to create chances, likes to score goals. Just what Rangers are badly lacking right now. That's as much as Rothwell and Fernandez are beefing up sort of areas in the pitch with the light number, where they're really short is up front, especially as we see if Igamani and Cyril Dessers go. Those deals, I must say, seem to have gone a bit quiet today. Talking France that Lille are perhaps looking elsewhere. I'm still told that there's still not been an official bid made as far as I'm aware, and whatever discussions there's been, Lille are still a wee bit hesitant about the numbers that Rangers are looking for. I think, I'm not sure they're prepared to go much higher than £13.5 million plus add-ons. And if Rangers are serious and about wanting to sort of make a statement in terms of selling a player this summer, they're going to hold out for as much as possible. But this is where the new regime's resolve is going to be tested. When me and Scott sat down with Parag Marathi and Andrew Kavanagh a week or so ago, they were insistent they don't need to sell this summer. They're insistent that the money is there, the finances are in place, that they will only sell if the deal's right. And so this will be the big major test of that. They've already seemed to have fended off whatever interest there was in Cyril Dessers from AEK Athens. I'm told that interest hasn't gone away, but again, it's these deals are taking longer than most people expected. I wrote a piece the other week. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think if Rangers can stall things and get to July 22nd with those two players still in the books, and certainly just to get them through that first round of qualifiers, I think that would suit most parties. Whether or not the buying clubs are prepared to wait that long is another thing entirely. But ins and outs, there's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, even that, I've just wrote a piece that's on the website just now that tomorrow Jose Cifuentes is going to be checking back in to the club. The long forgotten. I mean, he seems to have been somebody that has slipped out of memory, out of sight, out of mind. But he's coming back. People I've spoken to are insistent he has no intention of leaving the club. He's got another couple of years left in his deal, I think. He was to 2027 he signed. There was interest in him from Greece. He's obviously came in under Michael Beale 2023. Had an okay start, but then really sort of fell away once Beale started to struggle. Philippe Clement didn't really fancy him much. Got sent to Brazil, didn't do much there. But since he's gone to Greece, everyone I spoke to over in Greece seems to say he had a really good, solid season last season, 29 appearances. And he's coming back, by all accounts, with his confidence renewed, and believes that he can fight his way into this Rangers team. I mean, whether that's going to be the case, we need to wait and see. But what I would say in his favour is that Russell Martin promised the day he was unveiled that this is a clean slate for every single player at Ibrox, that they will get a chance to impress, they will get a chance to show that they're worthy of a place in the team and a second chance. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Just before we move on from those guys, Rangers is he okay? Asks Andy. Would that cup tie them though? I think he means if they
for Europe. No. There's no cup tie laws in UEFA competition. Not even say for example, if it's Emama we're talking about going to Lille, they're playing the Europa League. There's no cup tie laws. Doesn't even matter if it's obviously the qualifiers to group stages to the knockout stages. There's no cup tie laws anymore. Those get, the final one was the January window one that gets scrapped a couple of years ago. So basically, if you're allowed to play in the same competition for two different teams now, that gets scrapped a couple of years ago.
Keith, Andy rightly says, look, Rangers need to hold out for as much as they can get. But look, see if they get offered 13 million for Emama, a guy that, he didn't even get a game till Christmas, more or less.
Yeah.
They should be biting the hand off that, surely.
Yeah. I mean, look, if it was me, I would do the deal. Yeah, absolutely. As I've said, I think that Emama is a player with really quite impressive levels of natural talent. What he can do in the ball is incredible. He's the sort of guy that could get you out your seat. He does the unexpected. Bit of a nightmare to play against, I would have thought. But also, I do come back to the fact that I think he's a hard guy to coach down. I think he sees himself, he plays like a free spirit. He doesn't play within a structure. I don't think you could, if Russell Martin kind of style of play is going to be predicated on triggers and high presses and leading from the front line, Emama's, I don't think, going to do that for him, because Emama plays the game that he wants to play it. And I think he struggles a little bit with taking on information as well. So I think Emama is just one of these guys that goes out and plays the game like he did in the street, growing up as a kid. And you'll either love that or you design a system which tactically doesn't have much room for it. And I think what we have learned about Russell Martin, and it'll be interesting to see it actually on the grass, when Rangers start the ball rolling for real. It'll be fascinating to see how that transpires, what it looks like. But I would have imagined that a fairly central plank of it will be structured pressing. And that will require your striker, your number 9, on many occasions to be the trigger and to be the guy that makes the first press, that the rest chase in behind. And I think, and I hope I'm not being unkind, but I think that might have been a problem in terms of Emama. I think it was even a problem towards the end of last season. And it was the reason why he more often than not would start on the bench towards the end of last season. So for all those reasons, I think if you can get a real hefty bid and, make a lot of profit on a guy that you signed a fairly knocked down price 12 months ago, yeah, I think I would be largely tempted not to jump at the first offer, and Rangers should resist that. And because it's not as if this is a guy with 2 years left in his contract. I think he's got another 4 yet to run. So they're not up against it in terms of they are with Raskin, for example. If Raskin...
I spoke with Issam Chirai, obviously the old assistant manager that left a couple of weeks ago. I spoke with him this week, and he was an assistant. That's a guy that Rangers have only seen a fraction of his true potential. And whatever. I believe that, Andy. Yeah, I mean, you're right what you say in terms of he's that sort of street player that, Tanner bar player, if you want to call him that. There's times when his decision making is what's let him down. It's not his talent. It's not any ability he's got. It's that just when to pass the ball, when to carry the ball, when to take the shot on, when to set up somebody else. or I mean, he's somebody that loves a nutmeg. I mean, there was times, I think back to the game against Fraserburgh in the Cup where Rangers were, they were on top, obviously, and they'd got a goal, but they weren't running away with the game at that point, and it was because he kept trying to nutmeg somebody, and there was a pass on, and there was never just make the ball, do the work, move the ball quicker, and you'll cut through their defence. So
game intelligence, Andy, that's
100%.
the question mark that I think I would have.
He's an off-the-cuff player, but what he needs is a wee bit of game street smarts as well. So, but I think, whatever Rangers are prepared to sell him now, you can double that maybe whatever next summer. I think his potential is that high. It's a bit as it follows the trajectory that Coman talked about when he signed him. They had to sign him last summer, probably when he wasn't ready, especially in a personal sense and that the maturity sense, moving to Scotland. That's why it took, as you say, 3-4 months for him to acclimatise and get used to the pace, the training, just the lifestyle changes over here. Had they waited to this summer, Rangers couldn't afford to buy him. That's why they had to buy him last summer. So they'll believe that if they can hang on to him another year, then that, whatever price tag they've got him now will be, multiples next year. But I think Rangers at this moment, they don't have that benchmark, that price tag level that Celtic have set. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something, and that's all very well and good saying, they're well entitled to stick their ground and wait for a fee. But I also think Rangers need to, invest some money. And if they need it back, if they are confident in their model, if they're confident in their scouting system, they'll believe that they can get somebody to replace them. I mean, obviously they've lined up Turgeman, we believe, from Israel. The clips you see to him, he looks like exciting talent. Well, if you need the money, still a man, get a decent money. £13 million, still very good, as you say, for a guy that hasn't been nailed on first choice week in, week out, and go and reinvest it in somebody that you believe can take you to the next level.
I think the one thing that Rangers have to consider on it, Andy, to be honest with you, is the worry that they might miss the boat. Because it's happened previously. You look at, Leo's interest previously in Alfredo Morelos. You consider that Egeman has had a bit of a breakthrough season in terms of coming from nowhere, going into the Europa League, scoring some spectacular goals. That's piqued interest. Where's this boy going? Where's his career trajectory? If I'm right, and if he would struggle kind of in terms of discipline to feature regularly in a Russell Martin team, then his value can go the other way, And by this time next summer, you could be sitting there, he's not played much football, nobody can really remember all that much about him, and all of a sudden you're knocking a 0 or 2 off the end of the potential bill. So I think if people are in around about the 13 to 15 million pounds, euros, whatever you want to call it, this summer, I think it's one that Rangers should certainly be entertaining and exploring.
Just before we move on from that, there's a few guys in the comment section asking, do we know if the 30% selling clause to his club in Morocco, is that accurate? Do we know that?
It was reported in Morocco.
We're near that level.
No? Yeah. Okay.
The 30% was reported in Morocco the other day, but I think it's been, and Andy will correct me if I'm wrong, denied by sources within the club.
Fair enough. There you go. Everyone asking. Moving on from Celtic and Rangers, Keith. We've talked a lot this week about Lawrence Shankland, and Hearts fans will have been delighted earlier today to see him arrive in Spain and sign a new 3-year deal at Tynecastle.
Well, we said it last night, Dan, didn't we? I mean, it wasn't confirmed last night. I think that was important to say that, and I think it was important to kind of just relay the pressure that has been around this whole situation and saga. Derek McInnes didn't want to take anything for granted. As when we were on the show last night, the second half was just kicking off in a bounce game between Hearts and St Mirren in Spain behind closed doors. And Derek McInnes, right up until kickoff, was waiting to find out was there a definitive, was there an answer, was there actual pen on paper. And you can understand why there was a reluctance to take anything for granted. But I did say in the show last night that I expected Lawrence Shankland to get on a plane and go to Spain and get everything finalised. That's how it transpired. Later last night, I think he did fly out from Glasgow Airport, and you saw from the pictures and some club media stuff that Hearts have released today, it's signed, it's sealed, he's back in his training kit, and he looks a happy boy about it. And I did say that for some time as well, Daniel. I really believed that this was something that the player wanted, the club wanted, the manager wanted, the fans wanted. And I'm really glad that, you know, whatever the problem was, they managed to get around it and unblock the impasse and launch Shankland as a Hearts player. And I'll reiterate, I really think this is a really good news story, a good feeling, and that sort of adds to the motivation and the feel-good factor around Hearts right now this summer. And I expect them really to have a really significant season next season.
And you can see from the comments, Singing the Blues says Hearts need to play him as a number 9, Andy. I mean, that for me last season was a bit wild, not playing him up front. With Derek McInnes, you'd imagine he will play up front.
Yeah. I mean, I must say, I've got to applaud Lord Shankland for adding all the sort of skill set to his game that allowed him to play in that sort of deeper role, because I remember when he broke through, for me, he was nothing but an out-and-out sort of goal poacher. And I would never, I remember seeing him play for Dundee United one night at Tannadice during the sort of COVID season, and I was thinking, I remember wee Scott McDermott was forever sort of tipping him for a move for Rangers at that point, and I was like, Scott, I don't see it. Yeah, he's a goal scorer, but I didn't think there was enough to his game that would allow him to sort of hit the heights that he has. And fair play to him. I mean, he's absolutely sort of taking his game to new levels. I just look at the pictures there. I mean, for me, I think he looks leaner. I think that was an issue last season. I didn't think he was at his peak fighting weight. I think just judging from these pictures, it's not the most scientific of tests, but for me, it looks like he's in good nick already. I think we all saw pictures of him sort of on holiday doing one of these sort of training sessions that all the sort of players seem to do these days. I think he was training with James Tavernier in some sort of fitness camp. He looks like he's in good nick. I think that should be encouraging for Hearts. I think Derek McInnes, I believe, is the type of guy that will get the most out of him. I think Derek McInnes is somebody who likes a proper centre forward. I think he'll build his team not just around him, but geared towards getting the best out of Lon Shankland. And I think we all agree last year was a disappointing one. I don't think the contract talk helped last season. He'd had that incredible year before, hitting, 32 goals for club and country, went to Euros. But then obviously there was all that talk at that stage around, is he leaving? Obviously the never-ending speculation about a move to Rangers. As far as I was aware, that was never on the cards, the move to Rangers. He keeps obviously talking about Emama and his ability to press. As far as I'm aware, that was always the reason why Rangers weren't interested in him. They didn't feel that he was dynamic enough in how he lead the line in a defensive sense. In terms of Hearts, so in terms of McInnes, he'll want somebody at the top end of the park that knows where the goals are. And that's what Lon Shankland guarantees you. And I think you're absolutely right. You play him as your centre forward, you ask him to stand between the posts and you deliver balls to him. And then football can be a game that can be overcomplicated at times. I think when it comes to Lon Shankland, just give him the ball in the box, you'll see the benefit of that.
Keith, hit me with a prediction before we wrap up. How many goals will Shankland score next season?
Look, do you know what? What I would say is
past that, Daniel.
Let's go past. What I would say is I would be surprised if he got any less than 20, and not surprised if he got considerably more than that. I think if you put the kettle on for 20 goals, you won't be disappointed.
Aye, I think that's fair.
Tentatively, I'd say 20 plus.
No, I completely agree. I think, like you said, Andy, he knows where the goal is. I think 20, I was going to say it was a safe bet. I don't think you can ever go that far, but
you never know injuries and all that. But so you need to. But all things being equal, Lon Shankland playing regularly, staying fit, I don't think that 20 is an unreasonable target for him to set himself. And as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he did a little bit better than that. Because
last season, what was it? Was it just about made double figures last season? You consider that you consider that a poor return from him. So
it was a poor season for him last season. Yeah.
If you can get any sort of form out of him, I think 20s are a real asset, especially if Hearts can sort of, themselves a team. Because the problem was last year, nobody was scoring goals for Hearts last year, and that's obviously what led to their struggles. But if Hearts as a team, if the guys running about them can contribute and they can be a much more forceful attack, then I don't think there you go 9. I don't think 20 is a far stretch for a guy who has his ability.
Also, Andy, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that Derek McInnes will design this team around his qualities in order to get the best out of him. Derek McInnes, some people complain about his style of football. I think in the right environment, and I think the right environment will be Hearts, I think it might be similar to what he did at Coman. Two strikers, wingers, wide guys. The priority being get the ball out wide, get it into the box, create as many chances, get teams on the back foot, be dynamic, be aggressive, front-footed. And you've got that against the backdrop of that stadium when it's ram-packed in that sort of atmosphere. I think this is why I get really excited about what could be to come around the corner for Hearts next season. And if that's the way that he goes about it, and I strongly suspect it will be, then I think the amount of chances and the XG that Lawrence Shankland will get, the Dolphins will talk about that. But just in pure layman's terms, he's going to get more chances. He's a taker of chances. He's going to score more goals. It's as simple as that. I'm
just excited about the entire season next season. You're not, Keith, I mean, you look at Celtic, adding to their, double winning squad, Rangers under new ownership, new management with Russell Martin, adding a player every other day, it seems at the moment. Hibs with the investment that they've got, David Gray having had such a phenomenal second half of the season, Aberdeen building that Scottish Cup win, Hearts with obviously the Tony Bloom cash, Derek McInnes. I'm just intrigued to see how that works. I think he thoroughly deserves another crack at a really big club. Even likes to sit Mirren, what can they do? Having been so consistent under Stephen Robinson, Muller under their new manager. I just think there's so many great stories up and down the league in the next 12 months. It's going to be a fascinating campaign ahead. I hope it just lives up to the bill and we're giving it. I didn't think the league last year was a particularly high standard. Celtic were the only team that showed much quality. Hibs, at times did, but I thought outside of that, even Rangers, I thought were a fairly drab watch for most of the campaign. Aberdeen, it was great to see them get the Scottish Cup win, but again, the times where they flattered to deceive, Hearts were poor. So I'm just excited to see a properly good competitive league, and I think we do have that. I think we get signs where, especially those big three, but out with the firm that looks like they're tooling up, and this could be a season to certainly savour. I sincerely hope that is the case.
It's definitely shaping up nicely, and we'll be here to cover it as it unfolds, all of the drama and action next season. But for tonight, I think that brings us to the end of Hotline Live. Thank you very much for all the comments as ever. We massively appreciate it. We'll be back to do it all again on Sunday when we'll be reacting to Rangers pre-season friendly against Bruges.
Well, that's going to be interesting. A first look at what the Russell Martin project looks like on the grass. And Andy, I think, will be there. I don't know if you'll be able to join us, hopefully, Andy.
Me and Scott McDermott, so I'm sure one of us will catch up with you after the match.
Wonderful. That's a binding contract as well, that verbal contract. So there you go. As I say, thanks very much for watching, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Cheers, bud.
Cheers, everyone.
Hope you can join us Sunday. Cheers.